So I'm going to talk about the need for financial institutions to use technology so that they can really change the way that they implement change across their organization. Um, it's interesting that some of the challenges that we're going to look at today around competitive threats, we're going to look at some of the drivers for that change, and we're going to look at what organizations can do to help respond to that changing regulatory and market environment so that they can ensure that their organizations are fit for the current business needs and the current regulatory needs that they are facing out there in the marketplace. We've got a couple of case studies. We're going to talk a little bit about technology, and hopefully you'll get a very good feel for what organizations are doing now in order to dramatically change the way that they implement applications across their enterprise. One of the things that was worth noting is that clearly, COVID-19 has had a dramatic impact on the way that organizations had to adapt their ways of running their businesses, the ways of running their processes, the way they're running their people, in fact. But it's interesting that there have been market drivers that have been the way that organizations change considerably, even before COVID. COVID is an example of one of those enterprise-wide generational changes that are impacting organizations across every kind of geography and across every kind of industry. But there are other drivers that are impacting industries more specifically, which are very representative of what organizations need to in order to drive that change. I'm having trouble changing the slides here. I'm sorry. So we have a situation with different drivers, market dynamics that are accelerating change across banks. So you've got rapid technology innovation, which is forcing organizations to look at the way that they manage their relationships, not only with their customers, but their internal processes as well. You've got increasing client expectations that are driving change around how they interact with technology, how they interact with those financial organizations for which they are making significant commitments to, and their expectation, pace at which they can get the answers to the questions that they have. And then finally, you've got regulation, which has clearly driven significant change within financial services over the last 10, 12 years since the financial crisis, and will continue to drive change moving forward, as you see examples here. I suspect also that the outcome from the regulators around COVID-19 is going to be yet more regulation as well. So the impact that regulation has is going to drive the need for organizations to make increasingly fast decisions about how they want to run their organizations in the future. So there are really two problems that we need to address here. And the first is around data. And data is key. Now, the biggest problem and issue that you have with data, especially with large organizations, is it tends to be distributed across many different systems. Gaining access to that data is then becoming much more problematic, because what you need is data in the right place, in the right time, in order for you to make the right kind of decisions. And if you look at what digital transformation is trying to deliver, that's really what it is. It's about the effective use of data across your organization. So data has been a challenge, especially for large organizations that have legacy infrastructure, but it's becoming even more of a challenge as well for fast growing fintech organizations who've made significant acquisitions. They've grown organically and added more and more systems to their infrastructure. They're also starting to see some of these these impacts around data and data silos. And it's trying to break down these data silos is so important as delivering change within your organization. And this is, I think, is a perfect example of that, because what you also have is not only the issues about your own data, but how you use external data as well, and how you combine that with the data that's within your organization in order to get a complete view of the customer, of the process, the transaction, the product, the piece of work that you're looking to achieve. Data in its own right is absolutely key to this, but it's only when you start to combine data with the processes within your organization and the people within your organization that you really then finally start to achieve the ability to do rapid transformation of your processes and your businesses, either lines of business or group functions that sit within your organization. There is another challenge, however, that we also need to address, and that is the decision process that organizations have to go through in order to deliver change as well. And if you think about it, technology can help here. If you look at some of these drivers for change, regulatory compliance, market drivers, customers' expectations, competition, technology, how they then feed through into an organization and the decision makers within those organizations, how they manage the processes of arriving at strategic change, and then feeding those decisions through to the wider organization, clearly can be done in much more effective ways. And technology has the opportunity to be able to deliver solutions that can support that change in quite a dramatic way. And I'm going to take you through a use case, an example here of managing. Yeah, thank you. Um, and what we're having here, if is you're seeing a process for change for new regulation. This is one of those. If you think about some of the big changes that have been happening to organizations over the last few years, it's around data privacy, it's around MiFID compliance, it's around all sorts of different stress testing requirements, all sorts of regulatory change that the governments and regulators are putting onto their financial services organizations to ensure that they are better position to be able to manage events such as COVID-19, but also the disruptive elements of the market cycle when organizations are either growing or contracting, through to how they then manage the reaction of those pressures. So if you look at how regulatory change happens, regulatory change is often a discussion and interaction between the regulators and the companies in which they regulate. And if you look at the top right-hand section here, regulatory affairs is about managing those interactions with the regulators, being able to address the issues and questions that the regulators are asking, the policy changes, new laws and industry issues. And that's a very circular process and an exchange of data with the regulator, or the regulators if you have large global businesses. Then as that regulation starts to crystallize, then financial services organizations need to start considering what the impact of that new regulation will be on their organization. And that's where you have solutions like horizon scanning that then help you manage and assess the impact of new regulation across the landscape of your organization. Which organizations or which departments or lines of business are going to be impacted? How will that regulation impact those organizations? And deliver that analysis and review so that those impacted departments or functions then have the opportunity to react to that in a way that allows them to affect change in an effective way. And I think if you look at this third element, this change management process, this is where platforms and technology can really deliver benefit to organizations, because if you use platforms effectively and technology effectively, then they can help support rapid change of your systems and processes and underlying IT architecture in order to make sure that you are compliant with the new regulation. And then clearly, finally, the last leg of that is internal audit. An internal audit is making the assessments of those changes, identifying the updated risks and controls, ensuring that the policies and procedures reflect the reality of what's taking place in those operational areas or those functions, and identifying if there are any deltas that need closing. Next slide, please. So how do you use technology to be able to affect this rapid change? Well, there is three things that you need to be cognizant of. First of all, you need to have the building blocks of process and automation in place. And that typically means workflow. It typically means case management, business rules, artificial intelligence, all together under one platform that allows you then to build processes, workflows, combining with those other technologies in a way that makes you able to rapidly deploy new functionality and build new applications. But as we talked about earlier on, it's not just the processes that are important, it's about data and how do you get data. And therefore, this is one of the most important elements that you need to consider is when you're looking to implement new technology within your infrastructure, do you have to then take data from your existing systems and migrate it into a new proprietary data model? If you do, that's going to be problematic. So you want to work with a platform that can take data from the golden source and be able to use that within the context of a digital process and then update those golden source records as appropriate. They don't force you to put your existing data into a new and different data model. Solutions that can do that dramatically reduce the cost and time and risk of implementing and deploying new functionality. And then you need to consider this whole idea of what low code is, what low code can deliver to your organizations as a way of being dramatically faster in developing functionality across your organization. And in the next slide, I'll just show you what we mean by low code. Low code is really about building process models, about using drag and drop functionality, using your mouse to build applications rather than just the keyboard. And as you compare the two approaches in this slide, you can see on the right-hand side, I think that's Java programming versus this very visual process, which you can use and develop with low-code app platforms. The key advantage to this is that your business SMEs can now collaborate with your project and delivery teams using a common language, because your business experts can follow and understand the process flows that you can use in a low-code platform, and it makes sense so that it enables and facilitates collaboration between business and IT. And that's something that's been very difficult to do when you look at traditional ways of building applications. Next slide, please. So if you are using a low-code platform to build applications, you can apply that in a number of different ways. You can fill the white space within your technology landscape by building applications that do precise and exact functions or features. Alternatively, you can use that integration and data capability to enhance the functionality of your existing core platforms or some of the legacy solutions that you have that hold very valuable data. What you are now able to do is use that integration capability to be able to use that data across your enterprise much more effectively and build solutions much more quickly that allow you then to meet the changing needs of your organization, your customers, and the regulator. And then finally, on the right-hand side, because of that integration capability, you're now starting to be able across the enterprise and links back-end systems, liberate that data so that you can use it in very complex processes that might sit across lines of business or geographies, different channels. All of that is now capable to be delivered as part of your overall digital transformation program. Next slide, please. So this is not something that we're talking about as some theoretical capability. These are organizations that have really bought into this whole low-code approach. Iccrea Bank is the fourth largest bank in Italy. It is a recent creation to manage all of the head office processes of 140 regional and credit banks across Italy. So the complexity that they have is really tremendous, because they actually now have the requirements and integration across all of these different banks. They were able to deploy 13 business applications in the first year, and the impact that that had on their processing time has been dramatic. What's also important is that once those applications have been put into production use, they are also still very quick to adjust and adapt as your changing business needs change and as your regulatory changes are driving change across your organization. So they should never become part of your legacy infrastructure. Next slide. Hopefully that's been of interest and helped to generate some thought amongst all the listeners here today. Many thanks for your time.
Great. Thank you, Guy, and thanks for the folks submitting questions. We have a few coming in already. Just a reminder, please submit your questions now so that we have time to get to them. And Guy, I really, I had to chuckle at that slide you put up showing command line versus drag and drop. I'm old school, so I'd put my command line coding chops up against your drag and drop any day. But I think the thing that you highlighted was absolutely critical, which is the low code environment really opens things up so you don't have to be a geek to code. You can be a business subject matter expert. And as you said, you're talking the common language. So I do think that's the most important thing of low code. It's not that it eliminates, the environment that programmers feel comfortable with. It's that it engages non-programmers. And one of our questions is, can I be coding agnostic in order to use a low code platform and build applications?
Certainly. Absolutely. The actual platform, the way that it integrates with other solutions is completely agnostic as to how that application was developed or built. The low-code drag and drop functionality of our platform is actually built on Java, but it doesn't stop you interacting with .NET applications. Solutions like SharePoint are already part of the integration capabilities that the platform already has. So really, you don't need to make any kind of strategic decisions about what the platform it is that you're going to, what the software that your organization uses, because really low code sits above that and removes the need for you to access that underlying core development code.
So then, Guy, is it fair to say that one of the additional benefits to low code is not just that it opens up the process of coding to subject matter experts, but it also makes it less important to decide on a canonical coding environment?
Exactly. It's, as you rightly say, there are still parts of the business that will still be driven by code development. This is not going to replace Java development or .NET development, but it's a facility that sits above some of those core platforms that you've built within those technologies and allows you to do things quicker with the data that sits within it. Build applications and functionality that you haven't been able to do at a pace before. We see it as very much a complementary technology in that respect, and I think our experience with both some of the larger organizations that we work with who've made significant investments in lots of different code-based technologies is that it works together very well. That part is also very important. you want to choose an open platform, one that works well with other systems and infrastructure that you've already made investments in. It's not good enough now to have solutions that want to hog data. You need solutions that can be open and integrate with other applications across your landscape. That way, you then truly get that digital transformation capability.
Well, and speaking of digital transformation, another question has come in. What about enterprises that have grown out of mergers and acquisitions where data resides in multiple places? How can a platform like Appian do that unification of the complex data environment?
Well, I think that's one of the key benefits of this
Hmm.
uh, lack of a proprietary data model. And that is very important because what happens is if you've got a number of legacy systems that you're trying to take that data out and create a single view, the problem is with most commercial off the shelf solutions, they've got a proprietary data model that you've got to then get that data in there. Appian doesn't work that way. We can take the data from any golden source record, combine it with data from other systems, other external systems, other data, and show that in a single pane for people then to be able to use that data in an effective way. And then at the end of it, we can update those golden source records as appropriate. What's also interesting is through mergers and acquisitions, as organizations look to consolidate technology underneath those core platforms, Appian can insulate you from those core solutions because the user experience isn't changed, irrespective of the technology that is supplying that data underneath it.